So in this video, I'm going to be speaking about a property deal that I worked on for the best part of the year and how it ended up falling through. So the reason why I'm sharing this is because I want people to understand that property isn't all easy. You know, there are a lot of setbacks, things like this can happen, and it's okay. It's part of the game. With any type of success, there comes a lot of failures prior to it. So I've spoke about my Doncaster flats, where the block of 4 flats in Doncaster, where that fell through, and then that led me and my brother buying the block of 4 flats in Halifax, which has been a great deal for us. So for me, it happened again. Of course, it's disheartening, but I know that it just means that the next deal that I come across and that I secure and complete will be the one for me. So let's dive into it. Let's talk about this deal that actually fell through. So let me take you guys back to March of this year. I was on Rightmove searching for blocks of flats, and I came across a block of 2 flats in Middlesbrough. And they were both 2-bedroom flats, and it was a detached house basically that had been converted into 2 flats. And I'd secured that for £121,000. They were both being rented out £550 each, so it came out to around 11% yield. And I was actually looking to manage those properties myself as well. So for me, it seemed like a really good deal. Cash flow was good. There was tenants in there, and so I just thought, let me put in an offer on this property. And through a few back and forths with the seller, we was able to lock in the price. Now with this property, I first used a lender, and they had a surveyor that's notorious for actually downvaluing properties. And they went in and they gave it a 0 value. So this was due to the fact that there was no comparables in the area. So Middlesbrough, as you can imagine, there's not like blocks of flats where they're freeholds all around the town. So because of that, they refused to give it a value. So I had to then switch lenders and then pay for a specialist surveyor to actually go out and value it again, because what I wanted was reassurance. So if the specialist surveyor was going to give it a 0 value or down value it again, then for me that was a sign to pull out. But if they gave it the value that I wanted, which was 121 in this case, then we're off to the races, we're good. And now when I used a second lender, the process was very long. So it took ages for them to look at my profile, accept my profile. It took ages for them to then actually go out and actually get a surveyor to value the property, and the report took ages as well. This whole process took months, you know, which delayed the deal. Now, eventually the report came back good, and the valuer was happy with the offer that I was putting in. So, and I think they probably recognized the yield. Like I mentioned, each flat was being rented out for $550, so that's $1,100 a month. Over a year, that's $13,200, which works out to just under 11% yield and a really good return on investment as well, with the opportunity of title splitting these properties down the line. Now, up until 2 weeks ago, the process was actually going quite well. So we got the draft contract in from the seller solicitors at the end of July. And from there, I worked with my solicitors on actually getting this property to exchange and completion. So when you exchange and complete, it's only then that it's legally binding that the title deeds of the property has to change ownership. So from the seller to the buyer. Now, a week and a half ago, the seller actually via their solicitor mentioned to me that they wanted us to complete within 7 days because they had received a higher offer. The searches still hadn't come back, so we were still waiting on the searches to come back from our solicitor. And because of that, we couldn't commit to the 7 working days. Now, 7 working days went by, and I actually went up to Middlesbrough last weekend to actually just view the flats and actually just see what they look like. Because prior to that, I had actually just been on a video call with an estate agent, and also I had just received a recording and a video of the flats, which I was happy with. So when I went over the weekend, I was quite happy with what I saw. You know, I spoke to the tenants. Now, there were some bits that needed a bit of repair. So, for example, the garden wasn't in the best state. Some of the fence was a bit broken as well. And actually, although the 2 sets of tenants that I spoke to were happy, one of the tenants did mention some things that hadn't been repaired and fixed within his flat. And he also mentioned that there was a lot of noise coming from the other flat anytime that person walked across the stairs or anything. But I didn't pay too much mind. I thought, I'm sure some of these things are easily fixed. We're all good. However, leading up to this, the seller was still pushing and saying, oh, if you can't complete within 7 working days, then I want a higher offer. And then I refused that. And then they came back and the seller was like, oh, I want you to actually pay for my solicitor fees and also my estate agent fees as well, to which I refused. So bearing in mind, I was in Middlesbrough on Saturday, came back on Monday just gone. I got an email from my solicitor to say that the seller had actually withdrawn. To me, it was a shock because I thought that the seller was just saying these things, but they wouldn't actually withdraw. But they actually received a higher offer, and they were willing to just jump out this deal and go with that other individual, even though we were very close to completion. So the searches had actually come back at this point. The only thing we're waiting for is a product switch with my lender and just one question that my solicitor had with the lender. Everything else between the solicitors had been agreed. The final report was actually being drafted, and we were days away from completing. So that happened last Monday. So the seller just completely withdrew. And then the funny thing was actually on Tuesday, the seller solicitors and asked my solicitors via the seller if they could actually buy my searches off me. So this would actually then speed up the process of his new buyer, which I refused, because ultimately me and this guy had an agreement. The fact that he just was able to just go with a higher offer after me and him had been working on this deal since March, I thought it was a little bit cheeky that he was now going to ask me to sell him my searches because of all the legwork I've done, so that his new buyer can be in a better position. Now, it was frustrating. I was quite fortunate though, when I spoke to my solicitor yesterday, they mentioned that I was actually on a no completion, no fee. Because of the lender that I used and because I hadn't come directly to the solicitor, they'd mentioned there was a no completion, no fee. So actually, I didn't lose as much money as I thought I would. Now, I thought I was going to lose about £5,000 altogether, but I probably lost about £2,000. So if we're including the valuation fees, the mortgage fees and everything like that. Now, the reason why I want to share that and even share the figures is because I just want people to understand this is the reality that sometimes comes with buying a property. You know, it's not guaranteed until you exchange to complete. And sometimes that property is just not for you. You know, I'm a believer in God, and I know that God's plan for me is the plan that's meant for me. So I think it's easier for me. I say easier, you know, it is in a sense where, because I've gone through something like this before and then it led to something good, then I have no doubt that the same thing is going to happen here as well. So yeah, that's what's happened. So block of 2 flats in Middlesbrough, and I was working on it from March up until a few days ago, and now it's fell through. So I've got to now forget about that property and actually get back on it and actually look for new deals. So that's what's happened. Property fell through, but we move, we get up, and we keep pushing forward, because that's what it's all about. So hopefully this video helps you to understand that this is sometimes the reality of property. Not everything goes your way. Deals fall through and you lose a little bit of money along the way as well, but you learn a lot. For me, this has made me more resilient. You know, I've got more grit, and I'm more determined than ever now to find a really good deal. So if you enjoyed this video, do give it a like, and if you found value from this video or any other video on this channel, then do subscribe as well. And until next time, happy investing.